She's spoken at New York Guard before. And while she's had an illustrious career so far, she's already planning her second career of being a librarian. Because already this year, she's read over 100 books. Anyone want to do the math on that? More than 2 per week, 2 point what? Use our calculator, come on now, all right. Everyone, please welcome Molly.
All right, friends, I am Molly Huie. I'm the team lead for data, legal analytics, and business at Bloomberg Law. We call ourselves DataLAB. And since our talk in New York, my team has gone from 4 to 12. So we're doing a lot of things. I'm gonna make sure I'm not overdoing the mics here. So in having a team that big, I do practically none of the coding anymore. So my entire value in coming here and talking to you is about how to manage your stakeholders. So please go ahead, get out your devices, get out your laptops. Because when Mark was talking yesterday and everybody's like, raise your hand, I'm like, I can do better than that. I can do a Slido. So either get your QR code or go to Slido and enter that thing. And I've got a little polling question for you. Because also, like Max, I do survey data. I'm wearing my surveys and data analysis shirts, which I also wore at New York R because it is my team t-shirt and this is what we do. And I wear it all the time. So now I have a conference uniform. It's great. All right, this will be up on the next slide too when you see. Yeah, it's got your same thing on it. Okay, so who are your stakeholders, right? When you're doing your data work, who are you targeting? Who's your end user? Who are the people that are feeding into your work? Non-technical. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, right? Because who among you is doing data work and giving it back to another data engineer, data scientist, and them going, oh yeah, I know exactly what you did. That's awesome, thanks. Like that doesn't happen. So it's kind of what tech people think you need and what actual scientists think you need. The amount of times that I get asked, hey, can you just show me how to do this in Excel? Cool, people, cool. I work with almost primarily legal analysts on Bloomberg Law. And very many of them have said, we went to law school, so we didn't have to learn about numbers. Okay, gotcha. That's why we call ourselves data counselors as well. And also in Max and Danya's talk, when they kept saying DBT over and over again, my master's is actually in counseling. So to me, that means dialectic behavior therapy. So we're doing some therapy in a group today. But what I want to come and talk to you about is how we use R and Shiny to make all of our survey data accessible to our very non-technical colleagues. Very, very smart, but non-technical. So I've broken this down into a 3 A's approach. Probably the majority of the data we use is survey data, right? So we're working with our legal analysts on the front end to make sure we're asking the right questions because none of my data scientists are attorneys, right? I can teach them how to craft a really good question so that the data we get back is good, but I don't necessarily know the right question to ask. Right? So what's going on in the marketplace? So when we're talking about making data available for everyone, accessibility, right? Like we can't tell them to go run a SQL script and just get the answer. Like we have to make it in a way that's usable. We have to provide appropriate training because like I said, they went to law school so that they didn't have to do numbers. So we have to tell them how to use the numbers, how to think about the numbers, what makes sense about this to them. And then availability and follow-up, right? Like this is not something where we can be like, here you go, see you later, have fun, bye. Especially because a lot of this work is being published. It's being published on the Bloomberg Law Analysis channel or on the Bloomberg Law product or being picked up by other outside sources. And so we want it to be right. So by way of background, I'm gonna go way back machine. I started at Bloomberg about 7 years ago. And that was right after Bloomberg Law had gotten Bureau of National Affairs or BNA, which was a legal content publisher, got acquired by Bloomberg to make the Bloomberg Law product. And when I started, they hired me as the surveys manager. And they said, oh, we've got these surveys. We've been doing them for 40 years. Great. Look at this, this is 45 pages long. And this was the shortest one. It was all paper. We would sell them individually. And all the data that we would collect, we would hold on to with a tight little fist and run it in SPSS and print these paper tables. And that's all people would ever get. Like, you want the data, go look at our report. Thanks. Right? Terrible. And also, Nick, if you're around here, like your cybersecurity brain is going to buzz because when I got there, my new boss was like, here's your file cabinet. Here's all the historical data. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Paper copies of surveys with PII on them from before I was born. Like why we were holding on to this stuff, it's gone now. Anyway, I digress. So enter shiny dashboards. Here's where we start talking about R. When we very first started doing more legal focused work, we got to design brand new surveys, and I was like, we are not making these paper copy reports and giving people tables that they can't do anything with. We're gonna make them a dashboard. And so we start with like, here's the index. We had a dashboard for each specific project, which was fine. We could reuse the code. We could, it wasn't terrible from our end, but it was terrible from the end user's end because they couldn't remember what the link was to the dashboard they were supposed to use. And if they happened to be able to get to this index, they couldn't remember the short name we'd made for the dashboard for their project. And then like a year later, if we're going to run their same survey again to trend it, then we have to figure out how to attach years to it. It was a disaster. So we had the individual surveys. I'm going to add Agile as the fourth A of our how to make your data available to everyone process, because we had to be real agile about this. And when I say agile, I do not mean having a Scrum Master. I don't have a Scrum Master. But we did start doing sprint reviews, and we did start doing retros, especially after newer projects, like what went right, what went wrong, what can we do differently next time? So we're trying to be real agile about it, and we're trying to really learn from our stakeholders, like, what do you want? How can we serve you better? So off of that index, here's what our original survey dashboard looked like. This is a shiny dashboard. We use Qualtrics as a survey hosting platform. We get the QSF and the CSV files of that data. We ingest it, scripting into a Postgres database, make the tables, use R and Shiny, create these dashboards. Works really well. So you can see we've got this list of things. We've got a count. We've got a percentage. One of the things that we built in that was super fancy was you see not the biggest dropdown. The biggest dropdown is survey question. The second dropdowns are workforce size and organization type. These are just the things that people like to filter on the most. Are you looking at in-house attorneys or law firm attorneys, and from what size of organization? So that's sorting and filtering. Sorry, I thought I turned all of this stuff up. Guess what? I'm not doing a meeting right now. This allowed people to do a little bit of their own sorting and filtering, but they would still have to come to us every time. They'd be like, hey, I looked at law firm only, but can you tell me what's happening with just bankruptcy attorneys or just IP lawyers? And we're like, yeah, we can, but you can't do that yourself. Sorry. Coming later. One of the things we liked about this, down here at the bottom, in our dashboard, we have a copy, CSV, and Excel download buttons, which is fantastic. It's super easy. One of our things at Bloomberg is that we are very brand conscious. And when we publish articles, we call them analysis pieces because we're not central news, we're editorial. So we can't write news and we can't write stories. So we write analysis pieces that get pushed out on a channel and look just like news. But for people to know that they're us, we have a very specific branding. Bloomberg is real weird about having the y-axis on the left instead of the right of your chart, and you only put the things on the top, and it's got to be the certain colors and the certain fonts. So I can't do that in R. I can't give people something that they can just download. We have a program that runs on Terminal. So if any of you are finance people and run Bloomberg Terminal, there's an internal program on that called Toaster. I don't know why they named it Toaster, but the story I tell myself is that you put in, already aggregated graphics like this, and bing, like Toast, you get a brand standard graphic. So that's why we made these download buttons, so that you can look at the data and the cuts you want and get data in a shape that works to go into Toaster. We also have a data visualization button on here. You can't use it, it's not brand standard. So you can't download it and do stuff with it, but it's so helpful in learning how to tell the story of your data to look at the visual first, right? So we're allowing our stakeholders and our legal analysts to be like, oh, this is the story the data they're telling. These are some things I can drop. This is where this is really going. And then they just download the data table and make their chart from it. So that was the first iteration. The next iteration, consistently evolving, agile, innovative, multi-survey dashboard. Because I was telling you that problem with the index of, you can't remember where your stuff is. We ended up pulling it all into a dashboard. So looks a little different. We gave it a blue header so that it looked different from the other one. And we've got a whole lot of disclaimer stuff on here. Like, this tells you how to use it, and it tells you where to look for things. It gives you big red warnings if you need to think about coming to our team for help with something. So what this looks like, I showed you the overview. This is the kind of Survey Explorer piece. there's a drop down and you can select which survey you want to look at. So people only need the one link. They come to the master survey dashboard, then they use the drop down to find the survey they want. You get an overview, a question list, and your responses. So the overview, it tells you when it fielded, it tells you how many responses you have overall. It will link to our final summary report when we're done with that and the Confluence and Jira. So we're like, we've got data on top of data in here, and it's great. The other thing we have is we built in survey analysis pieces, right? I told you analysis pieces equal news, but we can't call them news, so that's that. But we're getting so much data, and we have so many legal analysts that people can look at stuff and go, well, I don't know if somebody's written on that before. Come and find out. It's still a little bit of a manual process. Like if you write an analysis piece, you need to go here and click the little teal add button, and you can start typing, and it'll do a type ahead. It'll search our Jira system to say, oh, you wrote a piece called Looking for a Preparation Edge and Reconsidering Law School. It pulls it up. It pulls up the link on the news channel, and you can write a little description, put your author name in there, and all you have to do is hit save. And then we've got an entire repository of all the analysis that people have done using survey data, which is great. The next problem we had, we gave people free rein on these dashboards and they went bananas. And the amount of analysis I had to kill because I looked at it and went, did you realize you used 7 people? You can't do that, right? But they don't know because it's, these are not super technical people. So we built in a sample size indicator. You start with your full sample, you've got a nice green box. If you start using your sorts and filters and you get down lower than 30, you get orange. You get real low, you get red. So we make this really clear when you're not using an appropriate sample of data. It can't be any easier. And so when we train people to use the dashboard, we say, hey, look, if you see anything other than green, please talk to me first. There are ways to talk about this. There are specific surveys that we do. Every fall, we do one on litigation finance, and we survey funders. And there's really only 4 or 5 major companies that are funding litigation in this way. So having a sample size of 20 is actually pretty good for them. But there's ways to talk about it to represent data accurately when you have just a little bit of it. All right. Next enhancement, side by sides. We added this compare results button because people were saying, as we started doing surveys year over year, they were either having to have 2 instances of the dashboard open or like flip back and forth. So we're able to split the dashboard in half, and you can compare results. And so you can bring up last year's and this year's, or you can bring up this year's version twice and look at law firms on one side and in-house counsel on the other side. It's really nice. The only thing it doesn't do is crosstabs. Wait for it. Just wait for it. Crosstabs. When I gave a very similar talk in New York this summer, this Crosstab dashboard was not yet live. I was like, guys, this is beta. Don't tell anybody about it yet. It is now live. Our legal analysts have been trained on it. People are using it, and it is fantastic. So what we get is you can choose basically your columns and your rows on your Crosstab dashboard. We've built in a very similar color coding so that people just know if you see yellow, orange, red, you got to come talk to us before you cross things. We've also built in some guardrails where you can do multi-select questions and single select questions, but you can't do things that have logic ahead of them, right? So that people know the universe they're talking about. This has given us a lot of good training opportunities to help people understand the data that we have, who has answered which questions, and how to talk about it. So I wanted to bring this one up so you can see this big red warning. Don't make comparisons across groups without talking to DataLAB. Because when we put a multi-select question in there, people are like, oh, you did this and this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, no. The same person may have selected multiple of these. So again, training opportunities to tell people how to use multi-select data, single select data, and have it shown in a really good way. Okay, let's see. What else do I have on here? Oh, because Crosstab's dashboard is so fun. We made this so that it also does, what am I looking for? This one, central tendency. So you can get percentages for everything. You can also get central tendency on it, which is super cool. It also has the all your copy, paste, download, and a column visibility, which is really cool because if you decide like I really only want to see the people that are actively seeking new jobs or open to other offers, like I don't really care about these people, you can hide them from your download, which is pretty cool. Because again, if you're taking this and dropping it into Toaster for a brand standard chart. You don't want all that extra data. This is also new. I was telling some people earlier, I have another really big presentation on Monday to our leadership about like what we're going to do for the next 5 quarters and what my team's value is and what we're building. This is really helpful. So this is looking at the analysis pieces. This is using our Adobe Analytics data and our Jira data and combining them and saying, okay, pieces that we put out, like either our team writing it or us helping other legal analysts on other teams writing it, but with survey data, those pieces with survey data have like probably about double the amount of unique visitors to our site and more average views. Like those pieces kick it out of the park. So everybody should be doing that. Another thing I don't have visualized, but another metric we used was we put UTM codes on the end of links in analysis pieces when it's driving people back to the Bloomberg Law product. So say we write a story on like attorney well-being, right? Like, oh, mental health is going down. All these things are really hard. Go back to our lawyer well-being page on product. We've got a little code on there that can show that they came from that analysis and went to product. Our pages that we own are 5 of the top 10 on all of the product because they get so many clickbacks from pieces like this. So having that data to tell our end stakeholders, like writing these like newsy stories on, what a lot of attorneys would feel like are kind of touchy-feely things. Like, are you looking for new jobs? Are you burned out? Like, how are you sleeping these days? People like to read it and it drives people back to platform, so they may not necessarily buy our product because of it, but it's building awareness and it's building brand equity. And that's super important. So just quick recap. We went from 3 A's to 4 because Agile is important. Make your data accessible. Appropriately train your stakeholders on both the data that you're giving them and how you're displaying it and what they need to be doing with it. Be available for follow-ups. They should know how to contact you. They should know that it's okay to ask questions, even ones that they think are stupid. I get lots of those. And I tell people it's the most fun because if they have that question, other people have that question. And then be agile, right? Like learn and listen to your stakeholders. Be willing to make mistakes and be like, yeah, we were wrong about this. We're going to change it next time. And that is it.